Perfect. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Million Mom Movement call tonight. My name is Dominique Jeffries. I have been a council member on this council for about 4 months now. I have been a part of this community, this incredible community Purium for 5 years, and it has completely blessed myself, my family's health, and hi, Joseph and Gabby, and a lot of the people that I've been blessed to be able to share this opportunity with. And even being a part of this community, it's so amazing to be supported by other families, mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, everyone. We all come together to share health and wellness, to share economic empowerment, and it's just such a blessing to be together. So tonight, I'm super excited to learn so much more about the autism community and unlocking communication in autism. We have a very special guest that's joining us with the Spellers Revolution, and I'm going to let my friend Tirza introduce her a little bit later. But before we get into the meat of what we want to share with you all tonight, we love to start these calls off sharing our pledge. So Naiva, if you want, you can go ahead and share your screen. We can pull that up. And if anyone, I think Janelle, yeah, you had your hand raised, would like to share the pledge. Let me unmute you. Okay, you should be able to unmute now.
I'm muted, but I can't see the full screen. It's more to the left than the
Okay.
right. It's not centered. Okay, perfect.
Okay, great.
I pledge to defend the health of myself and my family. I pledge to choose organic foods that are minimally processed and free of non of man-made ingredients. I pledge to read labels and educate myself on all aspects of a clean living. I understand that my actions today will positively impact the health and environment of future generations. I am committed to sharing this movement on many I am the Million Mom movements.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And if you could just share a little bit about what this specifically means to you and your family.
It means a lot to my family with nutrition. The benefits of not eating processed foods, the balancing out for mental health, everything. It's the community, the love of the community. Yeah, and I also have somebody joining me tonight. Her daughter is autistic. I don't know if you want to say hi.
Hi, I'm Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
Nice to
Welcome.
meet you. Thank you.
So it's good to, get some knowledge on, and yeah, it's wonderful.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing, and thank you both for being here and everyone for being here tonight. Like you said, it's important for us to have the knowledge and the tools so that we can empower the people that we care about and then pass that forward to others. So thank you for sharing the pledge and just sharing your heart and being here with us. So I'm going to go ahead and get into the call tonight. So first I want to introduce my friend Tirza. She has spent over 30 years as an environmental activist, as a cultural creative, and a special needs advocate and community organizer. She is the mother of a 20-year-old son on the spectrum. And as a profession and spiritual path, she is a yogi and Ayurvedic practitioner who leads retreats and trainings. And in 2017, Tirza teamed up with Dave Sandoval and Anna Marie Sandoval to create the Awaken Project, which stands for Activating the Wonders of Autistic Knowledge and Empowerment Now, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to families with autistic children. Awaken produces week-long retreats free of cost to families with autistic children. And Tirza serves on the board of the Awaken as an executive director, coming from the experience of being a primary advocate and caregiver to her 20-year-old son who is deeply impacted by autism. Most importantly, Tirza is a mother to a wonderful son and daughter, an extended family of kids and teens in her community. And it's just such a blessing to be connected with you, Tirza. I love hearing your story and just being connected with you here. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it to you, and you can introduce our guest.
Thank you so much, Dominique. It's so good to hear those beautiful words spoken. Can everybody hear me okay? I've got these headphones and sometimes they're weird. Okay, cool. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so grateful for this Purium community, for this just extended community of people who care so deeply about our children, all our children, and just really taking care of our planet, taking care of each other so beautifully and so well. And I'm really excited to invite Dawn Marie on here. And Dawn Marie, you're going to have to help me with your last name. I'm not sure if it's Gavin.
It is. Yep.
Okay.
Gavin.
Okay, great. Thanks. Dawn Marie is, well, she's a hero to me at this point. My son, who is 21 years old, is autistic, and we've tried so many different forms of communication methods and so many different therapies over the years. And when we discovered spelling to communicate about 2 years ago, we went to the Ohana community in San Diego and Oceanside, where Dawn Marie, she's going to speak on this in a minute. And it just has changed. It's just really changed our lives. It's a really huge game changer for our nonverbal community. So I am excited to have her here with us. She has a lot to share with us. I would like to introduce her properly. And just to say, we're probably just going to be really loving listening to everything she can share with us. And then hopefully we have some time at the end for some question answers. All right, so Dawn Marie, she's an RN, BSN, AT, ACP, lots of letters behind this beautiful woman's name, is a former trauma and transplant nurse with more than a decade of experience in both Boston and San Francisco teaching hospitals. In 2003, she became a mother, and by 2006, both of her children had been diagnosed with non-speaking autism. Dawn Marie's dedication to finding effective communication methods for her boys led her to become an assistive technology specialist, a DIR floor time provider, and ultimately the founder of Spellers Center San Diego in 2017, and co-founder of the Spellers Method. In March 2021, Jameson Handley, a speller, and his dad, JB, wrote a book entitled Underestimated about their journey learning with her how to spell as a form of communication. In 2023, the documentary Spellers was released, which I highly recommend, showcasing how spelling and typing as an AAC methodology have liberated many non-speakers from a life of silence. Dawn Marie continues to dedicate herself to creating services and opportunities that support individuals with complex communication needs. You can learn more about the groundbreaking Adult Day program and alternative education placements she's creating now in Southern California at www.ohanacalifornia.com. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Dawn Marie. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And I'm already so inspired by what you all are doing for your families and for the planet. So thank you. I wish I had known about this group before as a mom, not just as a guest speaker. This is great. So thank you again for asking me to come. My journey, as mentioned, my sons are 20 and 21 years old now. And Evan, when he was first diagnosed, I came home. He got a provisional diagnosis from the developmental pediatrician. Both of my kids were developing typically. They had speech, they had eye contact, they were very engaged, and they started losing skills and regressed, which 40%, they say 40 to 40% of autism cases are regressive forms. And so for me, it felt like something had happened to him. I now stand where I think he really is neurodivergent and was born that way. But that made him a little more environmentally susceptible, I think, to the GMOs in our food and to the toxins in our water. And I feel like there's both nature and nurture at play, but that's just my personal opinion that based on his neurology, it made him a little more susceptible to the things that you guys are so passionately trying to keep out of your family's food and diet. And I didn't know, and I'm from a generation, right, where antibiotics first came on the scene, and I was born with a congenital heart defect, and every time I sneezed, the doctor would put me on antibiotics. I had open heart surgery when I was 3.5. I was the poster child for the American Heart Association one year. And I mean, I'm perfectly fine, by the way. It was a mechanical thing. It was not heart disease or anything like that. But I think I had 600 courses of antibiotics by the time I graduated high school. And so what I know is that my microbiome is nowhere near typical. And so when I was pregnant with my children, and knowing this as a nurse, you know, that so much of your immune system is located in your GI tract, and my GI tract's not typical. And then in those first 17 days of life, when my children's guts were trying to figure out, or their bodies were trying to figure out self from non-self, they were imprinted, if you will, with like sort of the wrong information. And so from the very, very beginning, they were having gut issues. And I didn't see it for that. I was a Western trained nurse, right? So I didn't think vaccines had anything to do with anything. You know, I really was trained to believe what most Americans believe. And it wasn't until I went back and started doing like a medical records review, because I was convinced something had happened. I wasn't convinced it was vaccines. And I honestly still think GMOs in our food are the biggest problem. But again, that's just my opinion, my belief. And I was, oh my gosh, when the first time I read and I was like, I've got to put my kids on a gluten-free diet. Like I thought that was going to be the end of my world, because my cravings were always carbs and pasta and bread and whatever due to my microbiome, right? Little did I realize how deeply I would go down the nutrition pathway trying to heal their gut, and how, I mean, every single diet there was known to man, including by the time Evan was 7 years old, I actually had to take him off all food altogether, diagnosed with Crohn's disease and in significant pain, screaming and self-injurious 11 hours a day. The doctor was like, I'm like, look, when he's sick and can't eat, he's not in pain. Like when he has the flu or whatever. And so he said, well, we need to put him on a new diet. I'm like, I have done them all. We have done GAPS diet. We have done, like, I've done them all, and I've done them to precision. And we only get so far in his healing. I don't know what else is left to do. And he said, you have to go on the no food diet. I'm like, well, how do you do that? And he's like, he has to go on elemental formula. And so and I said, well, I'm not putting a G tube in him because he can swallow. Like I don't, because it's formula that doesn't have anything in it. It does not need to be digested, right? It literally goes into the small bowel and can be absorbed. He basically said he needs years of full bowel rest because it was that severe. He said he was we go to a specialist in Texas, and he said he's one of the 5 sickest kids that I've ever worked with. And like, I think this is the only way we're going to get him in remission, because I've been so faithful about all the diets that I've been doing, and no infractions, no, I mean, it's just, that's all I did was cook and feed my kids. So long story short, that did actually put Evan in remission. And now he's on a regular gluten-free, dairy-free, organic, soy-free, sugar-free, you know, all the things diet, but he can eat regular food. And we only had to do that for a couple of years. I didn't have to do it for his brother, but at that point, now my children still non-speaking, unable to communicate except through gestures and whatnot. My younger son had started picking up a little bit of speech, but minimal. At that point, I could now focus on communication and, you know, education and all those things. But prior, he was on, from a school district perspective, he was on home hospital most of the time, or homeschooling, because who would put their kid on a bus screaming and self-injurious? I'm like, I can't send him to preschool like this, or I can't send him to first grade like this. So those first 10 years of their life was basically me being a stay-at-home nurse, really, like trying to bring them back to health through nutrition and supplements. And even supplements weren't an option until his gut was a little bit more healed, because he couldn't absorb the supplements, right? So then all these things were opened up to me, which was amazing. And now we can maintain that level of health. And my younger son had primary immunodeficiency. We've been able to turn that around through nutrition as well. So they're both doing really, really, really well. And but I was like, you know what, my Evan, my oldest, I'm like, he still can't communicate. And so that became my passion of like getting them to a place where if the bar was really low, because there was 2 of them, and I've been a single mom for the past 13 years of their life. And so I thought, there's 2 of them, there's 1 of me. If I can't do everything I want for both of them, like what is the bare minimum I want to accomplish? And I really wanted them to be literate, to be able to read books and to go on the internet and explore the world, even if they could never leave where they were living. And I wanted them to, at the very least, be able to protest. Because I imagined, like, what if I'm gone someday and they're in their 40s or 50s and people are trying to make them do things they don't want to do? Like, I wanted them to have agency and like have a way to reliably show people, no, like, I don't want that. And so that was my low bar, right? What I got was a much higher results than that. My hope, I jokingly say sometimes now I'm in the hope dealing business. And when people will call me to say, my son or daughter, they can't do this spelling thing. They can't use a letter board. They don't know their letters. They don't know phonics. They can't read. I'm like, well, then I get into this whole, you don't know that yet. What you know is what you can see. And what you can see is that they've never been trained on the actual motor planning skills, which I'll get into in a minute, right? But that speech and language and that motor and cognitive are two very, very different things. And that we've all been taught, if you have a child who's non-speaking, or you know someone whose child is non-speaking, or even minimally speaking, or they have speech, but their speech is all scripting or echolalia, where they can repeat what you said, but it's not communication, right? Like, it's not a way to have a conversation with them. Those three categories of people really benefit from taking the pressure off and bypassing the need to use their lips, their tongue, their jaw, their articulator, as we call it, right? Using speech to communicate. Now, we don't discourage speech, right? But we're like, it's too complex when you're a non-speaker, because the condition that they have is called apraxia or dyspraxia. And it's just a disconnect from the brain to the body. So what we've learned, and by the way, my gurus and my guides are all these non-speaking, autistic and Down syndrome and otherwise just non-speaking, nonverbal kids who are now young adults, teenagers and young adults, who have given us insight into what their experience was like when they were younger. They guide my clinical practice now. San Diego and Tampa are the two largest spellers centers in the United States. We see the most clients every week, like 80 to 100 clients a week that are learning this. And we teach the parents, because if we're not working ourselves out of a job, we're not doing our job, right? As a parent, it's not much use to you if the only time you can hear your child's thoughts is like Thursday at 4 o'clock when they have their speller's appointment. Like, our job is to coach the parent or the caregiver or the communication partner that's part of the family or the network supporting that family to be able to do this with their non-speaking loved one. We teach the skills and then they keep practicing and generalizing it. So we have a heavy, heavy focus in Speller's method on training the parents. And that eliminates the fear of like influence, because if you Google any of these methods, you'll see some of the critics say that there's influence happening. It's the provider who's doing the communicating. It's not really the nonverbal student. And we make sure that that's not the case, right? That we're teaching you how to do it and that we're co-partners in how do we do this, no matter what this child's previous label or diagnosis was. Even if every school administrator told you they were intellectually disabled or their IQ is 60, I just gave a huge talk at Autism Health Summit and last year at the MAPS conference about the research and how the research or the standardized assessments we give to check people's IQ level all require proficient motor skills. So you have to put the block in the cup, or you have to point to the proper flashcard, or you have to do things with your body. When I say motor skill, you have to do things, motor on demand, move your eyes, which are controlled by small, fine motor muscles, same size muscles that control your lips and tongue and jaw. So here you are, nonverbal. You can't use these, but you're expected to look very quickly, find an object and point to it correctly to prove that you're intelligent. All non-speaking kids fail these tests because they're not designed for people who have ineffective motor skills. And yet when they fail the IQ test, the school district goes, oh, look, they're intellectually disabled. Therefore, they have to stay in this life skills class when they're in 3rd or 4th grade, or we're going to keep working on our colors and shapes and numbers into high school because they can't prove they understand them, right? And so it's hugely problematic because that's when these non-speakers, not all of them, but one of my children is spicy. They're both gingers, but one is especially spicy. And he got very frustrated because he's like, you know what, I know, and he got injurious. We don't, by the way, I don't use the word aggressive because aggressive implies that there's a real intent to harm you. And honestly, as you guys all know, I'm sure, it's really that their nervous system gets tripped into fight or flight. And therefore, when they start moving their muscle to be hit you or pull hair or whatever it might be, they're not using their thinking brain. Like that motor movement's coming from their brainstem and their amygdala, which is just reacting in a protective mechanism. There's no cognitive thought like, I'm trying to hurt you right now. And yet I've had countless behaviorists say, this is task avoidance, or this is whatever they would say. And I'm not anti-ABA, by the way. I just feel like there's a lot of misunderstanding out there in what's really root cause of behavior, quote unquote behavior. Behavior's gotten a bad rap. It just means something you're doing with your body. Talking is a behavior. Pointing to a flashcard is a behavior. But when the school calls you and go, hey, Trey had a behavior today at school, it's never, he shared so nicely with his classmate. It's always, you know, he pulled the shirt collar and kicked the teacher or whatever. It's gotten a bad rap, right? But these motor skills on demand, when I'm saying to a student or my son, hey, let's spell the word, you know, fictitious, and I put the letter board down, I need to coach his body. I don't need to say, find the F and poke the F, because then I'm taking out all the cognitive demand too. And I want him to do both. I want him to be using his brain and connecting it to his body. So while he scans and looks for that letter, he knows how to spell it. He's looking for it. And I'm using verbal prompts like find it with your eyes, look, get it. And my sound of my voice is like a foot on a gas pedal of his motor. What usually happens in public schools or in therapy sessions is they say, hey, let's spell fictitious. And they just drop the board and they wait for the student to do it, who has sensory motor differences. Everybody with autism or any kind of developmental challenge or delay has sensory and motor differences, right? They process sensory information differently. They're either overstimulated by sound, or they're really drawn visually to things, whatever it is, there's differences. That means they're taking in sensory information differently, which always affects their motor output. So if you know those two things are connected, as long as there's anything sensory that's different about a child or an adult, then their motor planning efficiency is also somewhat affected. And there's lots of geeky research I can send you guys on that if you're interested, by Elizabeth Torres. She's a genius, and really grateful for the work that she's done behind this. And we're trying to get this into the minds and understanding of public school educators, right? Because not everybody can afford private therapies and doing all these things, especially I know as someone who's spending hundreds of dollars a week on organic food, like there's not a lot of money left over. And I will add, that's another big perk of spelling, is that you can learn to do it without spending. It's the thing I spent the least amount of money on, as I said, but got me the biggest bang for my buck, because I got trained as a parent how to do this with my own child. So I had to put in the legwork, right, of practicing with him 3-4 times a week to get him to the place where at first I was teaching him a motor skill. Like at first I had the alphabet split across 3 different stencils and the targets were 3 inches big. And I would literally prompt him, say, we're going to spell fictitious. Look over there. It's over there. Go. And I'm gesturing. I'm literally helping him motorically move his eyes, find the letter and poke it, and develop this very well, we call it myelinated, right? Like we're myelinating this neural pathway of like, I'm able to reach from the shoulder and poke different letters. The words are always different. I'm not teaching him how to spell, because that's
Dawn
by the way-
Marie,
yeah.
one thing just real quick, for
Yeah.
those who are on this gathering and don't know the stencils, do you have anything
Yeah.
to show for that, or can you describe that a little bit?
You know what? I'm gonna have someone bring some down to me. I'm hiding in Ohana Days way down the end of the hallway, and there's nothing in this room, of course, but let me see, can you? bring me some
Thanks.
stencils, please? I should have thought to do that.
I think this
Is-
is just brand new information for some folks.
Yes, yes.
so-
So it's literally what you're probably imagining is there are these like size of a piece of paper, 8.5 by 11 plastic stencils that you normally would trace, right? But the alphabet is on them, and at first you start out with really big targets. So if I were to make them 3 inches big and you had 26 letters, the board would be like gigantic, right? So we put just 7 or 8 letters on one of 3 different boards. And I, as the communication partner, have to, I know the word we're trying to spell, and I will pick up the board that has that letter, that next letter we need on it. And I give an initiation prompt, like I'm starting their motor, I'm starting their car engine. And I say, we're going to find that first letter. Ready? Look, 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 get it, get it, get it. And then they look, and I start coaching them to poke the F. As soon as they hit the F, if I said fictitious, I don't know why that's my word of the day, but poke F. Then I find the next board, which actually is the same board. If the I is on that board, I say, okay, move your eyes over. They poke the I say I. Now lift your eyes up because the C is on the top row. Poke that letter, find it, C. Now I've got to switch boards to the T, right? And so it's this process in the beginning of, I know all the words that I'm trying to spell. It's not communication yet, right? Like I'm not teaching them to communicate. I'm teaching, it's like baseball. I'm teaching them to get their eye on the ball and keep their hands on the bat. And while they're looking at the ball, they swing and hit. And so I'm working on their swing, which is the poke, their eyes, which have to find the letter. And then I make sure they're getting to the letter correctly. And as they get more and more accurate, like on their first try, they get the correct letter for each of the words. Then I'm able to actually move them to a board that has the full alphabet. And once they're on that, and we start moving up, thank you so much. Did you bring me a set of, can you bring me a set of 3 too? Yes. Thank you. Because then once we're able to move, oh, there's a TV behind me that's black. That's not helpful. The alphabet has the whole alphabet on it. Now we're getting to a place where we're getting closer to using this for communication. Now, for the first time, I can say to somebody, hey, let's talk about the compass. So I do a little lesson on cardinal directions. And then I say, why don't you name one of the 4 cardinal directions? Now, I don't know, and I've taught it to them, so I pre-teach the information. I'm not quizzing them, right? That's not therapeutic at first. You're building rapport and relationship with your child so they know this is a new skill for them. So, but I don't know if he or she is going to spell north, south, east, or west. So I don't, for the first time, I don't know which direction they're going to go. And so I can't gesture and say up, 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 or over, over, over. I have to just say, find that first letter, whichever one you want, get it, go for it. Thank you so much. Just backing up a step. So this is an example of like one of the 3 boards, right? Where the alphabet is split across several. So I have to know the word we're trying to spell. Like I couldn't do that choice question. We call them semi-open. I couldn't say, hey, what do you want for breakfast? And put this board down, right? Because what if they're thinking pancakes or waffles? So that's why you can't do choices when you're still on this first stage of it, because you have to know what it is they're trying to spell. So we actually have this whole vault of lessons that we pre-print. There's books on Amazon under my last name. Like we've created resources, and thanks to AI, actually, you can write a lesson so quickly about anything you ever wanted to teach your child. Like that you thought, because the school told you they're intellectually disabled, you're like, gosh, I always dreamed of having a kid and teaching them about poetry, but they don't understand. They don't have the language, right? And so you thought they didn't know that. But language is a cognitive skill, right? Speech is a motor skill. Right now, when I'm talking, the sound of my voice is like somehow magically going across the internet, and you're hearing it in your earbuds, and the sound goes into your ear canal, and it goes into this part of your brain in the back of your brain called Wernicke's area. And it's going, your brain is telling you, okay, those sounds coming out of that woman's mouth are speech. Those are words. I hear those words. That's your receptive language, right? You're interpreting it. You know it's not the sound of a cat meowing or a truck going by. So that's intact. And then the signal travels down a bundle of fibers to the front of your brain called Broca's area. And now you're having thoughts and ideas about what I'm saying. And that's actually your expressive language center. So you've got receptive language and expressive language totally intact, right? But you need some motoric way to communicate for people to know that. You either need to text into the chat, you need to speak, you need to type, you need to whatever, like whatever it is, gesture, give a dirty look. Like you have to do something with the muscles of your body in order for us to know for sure that your language is intact, right? And that's why our kids, or nonverbal, non-speaking kids, failed all these IQ tests and are labeled as intellectually disabled because no one taught them the motor skill. So speech and language, speech is motor, language is cognitive. So again, my kids had expressive, mixed expressive, receptive language delays on their IEP for years until they learned to spell to communicate. And I'm like, they don't have a language delay at all. In fact, my son was 12 years old when I started spelling with him, again, because he was so ill for so long. And then it took me a while to get to that place. I thought I had to teach him how to spell before I would spend money. I'm a single mom. I'm like, I'm not spending money on a provider unless I know this kid can spell. So I was, which you don't have to do, by the way, this was a mistake, but I bought all these little plastic letter tiles. So total fine motor thing. And I'm trying to make him arrange these tiles to my satisfaction to prove that he could spell these words out that I would ask him to spell. He could not do that task. I don't even know if he could do that task today because I finally figured out his fine motor skills are so deficient, really, it's still a challenge for him, that I'm like, why was I didn't know any better. And I didn't know a provider to ask the question. Like, thank God there's so many more providers now who will tell you, don't do that. You don't have to do that. It's so much easier to teach them. And then you start to see what they know and what they don't know. When they first learn to control their eyes and their arm and just reach and poke these large letters, right? It's so much easier. This is considered a gross motor movement versus me having him manipulate these little tiles, which is a fine motor. Because think about babies learn to roll over, sit up, pull to stand, all these big muscle movements long before they develop a pincher grasp to pick up or develop robust speech, which is fine motor. So similarly, all we're trying to do in these spelling methods is take the motor demand down because we're like, the problem is motor planning or motor execution. So how do we make this communication easier on their motor? How do we make it easier on their visual motor? How do we make it easier on their not using their articulators, right? And using the shoulder to poke and point. So that's kind of the why behind it all. And then there's various modifications because remember I said ocular motor is tricky. And like, so for folks with Down syndrome, especially, they have a lot of visual challenges along with that chromosomal change. So we have various things based on developmental optometry. This bullseye pattern is really helpful for people because the hardest letters to see are the ones in the middle. The more there's crowding of the letters, right, the harder it is to tell the N from the O versus when you're on this big board, which you can also put paper behind or contrast. It's much easier to see between the two letters because they're so much bigger, the targets are bigger. But the goal is that you move from this board to a 26 stencil, then to a laminated letterboard. And now we're getting rid of some of the sensory feedback because it's just this easy peasy thing you throw in your car. I have them everywhere, in between the seats of my car, you know, in my house, every room, whatever. You can print them yourself at home on Canva. It's got a number board on the back. And now you're like spelling on the go because, by the way, you get totally to a place where you're having conversation with your child, the child you thought would never answer like a question you didn't know the answer to, right? Like you're having conversation with them on that stencil before we start making the motor difficult, right? We want to get that cognitive all the way out. We want the most robust communication we can get on that stencil because they're still getting really good sensory feedback when they poke a pencil through that. Now, if your kiddo can't hold a pencil, again, we have board modifications for that. Like we have accommodations and modifications no matter what the sensory motor profile is, but the path goes from 3 boards to a 26 board to a laminate board, and for some then to a keyboard or to a keyboard that nobody is holding anymore, that's on the table. That's called independent typing. Not every speller will get to that, But I feel at this stage in my career, having been doing this since 2017 professionally, 2015 for my son, and some of my friends' kids that I started working with at the same time, I feel as long as a student has some vision, because some don't have vision in one eye or, limited complex vision, but has some vision, and can move their arms. Like there's Rett syndrome, where there's a couple conditions where sometimes that's challenging and they might need a different like eye gaze technology, and that's not my forte. But if they can move their arm a little, they could have CP, cerebral palsy. If they can move their arm, I'm confident with it could take a few years, but we can get them to a board that has the whole alphabet, right? And once they're on that board, even if the most fluent they get is they can answer a single word question, like, where does it hurt? Like, tell me what part of your body is hurting, and they can spell stomach or head or whatever. Like it's a life-changing experience for that family. Other spellers are typing with two hands, totally non-speaking before, right? Nonverbal. Parents thought they were intellectually disabled, and now they're typing autonomously. Yes,
So
go ahead.
Marie, I just want to just give a picture to everyone of what this is
Yeah,
like.
yeah.
So my son, when he was, I think we brought him to the Ohana in Oceanside, where Dawn Marie has her offices, her clinic. I think he was 18 and a half was the first time we went in there. The very first day we walked in those doors. And first of all, I just want to say it is such a loving environment. Like the first thing you see is a plaque that says presume competence. And it's kind of the mantra of everyone is presume competence. And it's a really big shift in the way we approach these nonverbal individuals. So anyway, we walk in, and the communication partner comes in, who's this delightful, delightful person. And I'm thinking, okay, so I'm sitting there, my son's in there, and I'm thinking, maybe they're going to start talking about apples and oranges and spelling them out or something like that. But the communication partner launches into this lesson and reads to my son for easily 3 to 5 minutes straight, I would say, all about government systems, about Benjamin Franklin, about beginnings of government, about how, there are different branches, like pretty complex government lesson plan. And I'm sitting there going, this is crazy. Like, what are they thinking? I don't understand. And this was his first lesson. So he hadn't even ever done this before. And he began answering questions. They read the whole thing to him. And after they were done with it, they would ask certain questions. Like, who was the person we were talking about in the first part of this lesson plan? Benjamin Franklin. Now, my son didn't spell out his first name, the whole name the first time, but he was able to start it. And so basically, I just want to give an idea of what happens in these lessons is that idea of hope, or the ways you thought of your child and that they could or could not do something, shift dramatically, immediately, oftentimes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty, it's funny, my assessment lesson, we call it, the first session we do as a provider, I do always recommend, how I said, you don't have to spend a lot of money on this. I do highly recommend people get a professional assessment at first, because we will look at your child's ocular motor, their total body motor, figure out, you as parents, you are an expert on your child, like no doubt. But we look at their whole sensory processing and how that's impacting their motor output. So we can help pick the best starting letter boards, and maybe even stylus. Should they use their finger? Should they use a pencil? Would a weighted stylus help them know where their hand is in space when they're moving towards the board? Like, we'll save you so many trial and errors by professionally assessing and going, here's your prescription, so to speak, right? Like, these are the boards you should start on. here's a starting set of a couple lessons. Here's how you write your own lessons, like give you that stuff. But if you're not near anybody, or like flying is like totally out of the question, like a provider, you're not near one and you can't fly to one, we do have an online course we offer that you can do from home. And your child isn't in the actual live class with you. We teach you all the content. And then you try practicing during the week and record a 10-minute video that you submit to your mentor, who is one of our expert providers. And they give you personal coaching over the 8 weeks. And every week they're like, take our feedback, try it, record that session and send it back again. So, and there's scholarships from Speller's Freedom Foundation that pay for almost half of that course. And so there's just resources to use to like get you on the right foot and get you going. And then there's a Facebook group called Speller's Community, where parents support other parents and give you their own story. Because I mean, I'm a parent and a professional, and that gives me like a little added credibility, because I started in this because I was a mom and I just wanted to learn to do it for my own child. And my speech pathologist said to me, when I said to her one day, I'm like, Regina, like, we've been doing this 3 times a week. I've been doing speech therapy with him 3 times a week. I've been practicing everything at home. Like, all I was trying to do is get single syllables that were reliable. He was so apraxic. He couldn't even pair his gestures with the same syllable every time. It was, very, very difficult for him. And I'm like, I think I'm going to teach him. And it was called RPM, the original one, rapid prompting method. I go, I'm going to teach him RPM. She's like, you know what they say about those methods? I'm like, yeah, I've read they think it's the person teaching it that's influencing. I'm like, but I'm going to do it. Why on earth would I waste my time getting my child to spell things that I'm wanting him to spell? That's like, I have better things to do, right? Like, if he's not going to spell his own thoughts, there's no reason for me to do it. That's why I want to learn. And that's what we've carried into our practice, to go, it's about teaching you how to do it so you feel confident, and so that your child can spell with more than just a trained provider. And that course that we teach online is about helping you become that provider for your child. You don't graduate able to assess all your neighbors' kids or other people's children, because they all have different sensory motor profiles. We have a practitioner course for that, but that's super rigorous. It takes 6 to 9 months to complete. You have to have like 9 clients to work with, because you have to be able to pretty much work with anybody, everyone from a 4-year-old, which you can start this as young as 4 or 5 years old. And there's no upper limit. So even if your speller child, adult child, is 35, 40 years old and has never done it, and has never done more than communicate with single words on a voice output device or whatever, they can still learn to do it. My friend in Tampa, her oldest client started at age 57. This woman's parents were in their 80s. They never thought they would have conversation. I mean, can you imagine? They're in their 80s and they finally now are having open conversations with their 57-year-old daughter. Like, it's so amazing. That's what I say about the hope dealing business, like it's really, it's so awesome. So there's no upper limit. I sometimes caution families for starting too young. Like, I get wanting to not miss the boat or something, but you're chasing squirrels. Like, a 5-year-old is not meant to sit for adult directed instruction, which is what our lessons look like, for 45 minutes straight. Like, it means there's a lot more moving bodies. There's a lot more sensory motor priming, that you got to do some OT style exercises first, right? Spell for 15 minutes, do some more sensory input. Like, it looks different. So I'm always like, to the mom or the dad or the caregiver, like, what are your resources look like? And I don't mean money. I mean, like, your stamina level. How many kids do you have? Like, you know what I mean? How much can you dedicate to this right now? Because you're not going to miss out if you wait till they're 7. Like, as long as they're not having complete meltdowns over clear communication breakdowns, I'm like, pause. Like, I love to be that parent to go, I've been there, I was there, and I know I kind of like stressed myself out for no reason from ages 5 to 7 about the communication thing. They're picking up everything. And what you can be doing, even if you're not ready to jump into this world of spelling or spelling to communicate, is start reading age-appropriate books to them, even if they are drawn to the spot books or the, whatever. I'm so bad. Dr. Seuss, whatever it is. Even if they're drawn to childhood favorites, that's comforting and soothing for them. It doesn't mean that's what they want to stimulate their brain.
Dawn Marie.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I want you to keep interrupting me because I could just keep blabbing away.
I love how much information you have. I am aware too that we do have to stop our Zoom at the top of the hour. And I just
Okay.
was wondering if we should give a little time in case
Yes,
some people have some questions. It's such
totally.
a treasure to have you here. And so I wanted to just stop for a moment and give anybody who has a question, maybe you can raise your hand and we can give it a moment, and hopefully Dominique or Naeva, you can help me because I can't really see everybody on the screen. I do see
Yeah.
Cynthia has a hand raised.
Hi, I am a general education teacher, and I had a question in regards to your sons. Were they ever taught letter recognition before this?
They were, but Evan, like for instance, Evan could not ever point to the letters correctly. And so therefore no one ever progressed him through the entire alphabet. Trey, my younger son, his ism was preschool material. So he had taught himself, like honestly, in our home from reading. What I learned from all these non-speakers that become fluent spellers and typers, they answer one of two ways. I'm like, how did you learn how to spell? It's not the traditional way that neurotypical children have learned. Like I had to learn phonics and go through the readers, well, letter identification and go through the readers and whatnot. They all say that either I could just always do it, or they'd say, I taught myself, or they just don't remember how they learned. Because they sometimes weren't given the exposure, right? And my son's first open answer, which again, I was like, this is crazy. This can't be real. This teacher was doing a poem with him, and she said, so it's not the first word he ever spelled. Let me clarify that. It's just the first time he spelled something where we didn't know what he was going to spell. And she said, what's another word for God's love? Because the poem said the sun warmed his skin like God's love. And I looked at my friend who's an OT. I'm like, do you know another word for God's love? She's like, I don't know, right? And he spells benevolent. And I was
Wow.
like, no, now I didn't believe it. I was like, oh, this has got to be snake oil and fake, because I'm like, there's just no way. Like how I went from thinking this kid, I never thought he was intellectually disabled, because some days he could follow, like for instance, 2-step directions, no problem. So I'm like, he knows the vocabulary. Like I'd say, get your shoes, put them in the basket by the door, or change it up. I could switch it. He could do it. The next day I could ask him to do the exact same thing and he couldn't do it. He'd pick up the dog bone and he'd put it on the couch. And I'd be like, so was yesterday the fluke or is today the fluke? And I was trying to figure out, was it a language thing or was it a motor planning thing? Do you know what I mean? And they ended up telling me it was like I said, they could already do it. They just couldn't prove they were learning it. And so sometimes school held them back from progressing through. Like they were still identifying shapes and colors and numbers like into, middle school, because they were never reliably choosing the right answer. So I teach like early on, I'm like, if you want your 4-year-old to do this, let's first just work on the reliable selection, right? And actually teaching the motor skill, or say one-to-one correspondence. I had said, Evan really loves math. And the teachers were like, he doesn't have one-to-one correspondence. Like he doesn't know that these 3 plastic apples equals 3, right? And I was like, well, how do you know that? They're like, because when there's 10 plastic apples and I say, hand me 3, he puts 3 in my hand and then he just keeps going. And I'm like, well, first, you have to teach him inhibition of that motor plan, because motor planning is initiation, making a plan, organizing it, sequencing it, initiating, moving your muscles, and then stopping. And so kids struggle, who are non-speakers, struggle with either initiating or inhibiting usually, right? And so I'm like, teach him. So he hands you 3 apples, then catch his hand and say, that's 3. Okay, now hand me 4. He hands you 4, stop him at 4. That's 4. Okay, give me 6. Let him keep going. Stop him at 6. And once he learns, okay, you know what I mean? You fade out all that prompting, and then he's learned the motor plan of, so he can show you what he knows cognitively with a reliable motor plan. And that's kind of what we have to embed in public preschool and kindergarten and, early grades. Because if that changed, if people started seeing this non-speaking thing, not as a cognitive disability, but as a motor planning, I think the teaching starts to shift. That's presuming competence, right? I don't think all kids are born able to like identify letters and spell. The non-speakers tell me they can, but I hold out, I might be teaching some of them how to spell, right? Like I might be teaching some of them, that's the A, poke the A, right? But it doesn't matter, because they'll end up, if they never had it anyway, they'll learn it through this method, because we can support them in that initial stage. you know what I mean, of helping them get to the correct letter.
Absolutely. Dominique, can you help me to call on people?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Elizabeth,
Really good question.
Elizabeth, you can unmute now and share.
Okay. I just had a question. What's your website? Can you like drop that in the chat? Because I have some other
Yes.
questions, but there are too many for this call, so I wanted to have
Yep.
a website.
I have a few things that I can pop in the chat. I'll just copy and paste some stuff. We also wrote a guidebook, my Florida Spellers Method co-founder and I, and we go through all the content. We tried to write it so as if you were having coffee with us, that it's a very, you know,
Okay.
whatever, simple to digest the concepts behind all of this. We go over it in more depth in our online course, but I recommend reading that if you're thinking about doing this, because it probably will answer a lot of questions, including what to expect in your first lesson, like, or session, like what do I need to do beforehand? What other resources are there? Reading blogs and books written by non-speakers who type and spell to communicate. Like there's a lot of information in it, and it's like $13 or something on Amazon.
Okay. Got it.
Dawn Marie, if you can even put and I see Justine's hand too, but if you can even put maybe, is there a link for the movie? A way for people to watch the movie? That would be really awesome.
The board of Spellers Freedom Foundation is mostly non-speakers, and the parents wanted it on like Netflix, and the non-speakers were like, nope, we want it on YouTube, because they wanted to make sure there was no barrier. They wanted it to be free. And
they know what's up.
They do. And
They
the parents
really
the parents are like, oh, like, and I'm like, they run the board. Like
They
it's
know.
it's their deal. I'm hoping this doesn't start playing. Let me copy the link. Share, good, copy. Okay.
Perfect. We have time for one more question. So Justine, feel free to ask your question.
Hi, it's just, I wasn't gonna ask or say anything, but I just thought it was funny that you said that they just know, some of them just know how to spell. So I have a very young autistic daughter, and she's 6. But since she was about 3 or 4, she's been very like, they call it hyperplexia.
Yeah.
So I mean, she's 6, she's finishing kindergarten, and she is like, she spells, like, she won't really do the writing unless my hand is on her hand, but when my hand is on her hand, she's doing the writing.
That's
And
amazing. Yeah, she can read. I guarantee you she can read.
Oh yeah, she can read.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's crazy because, like, I mean, I do it with her, but this is natural almost to her. And it's just funny that you said that, because I feel like she does just know how. Like, it comes very natural to her.
Well, luckily, like, have you guys ever heard of synesthesia? It's where like 2 or more senses can get triggered at the same time. A lot of people on the spectrum have it, and they're different ones. Bruno Mars has it. When he hears music, he sees color, and that's how he knows when things are in tune or whatever. So, I have the most common one. It's still only like 3% of the population, but it's a number synesthesia. And I can see time in my head, like 3-dimensionally. So whether it's a date, the clock, just the whatever, I see it without trying. And so I don't have it as deep as where, when have you seen some like savants go, August 3rd, 1972 is a Thursday, right? Where they just know. It's not because they've memorized it. They literally can look it up like it's a computer program in their mind. So I can do that, almost not to that level, but like, you tell me your birthday, I will literally never forget it, because I can't, because of the way my brain like activates that thought. So that's why I believe it when they tell me, like, I could just do it. Like, words are a pattern. And once they see the patterns, because they've flipped through baby books and whatever, and they start seeing the patterns, their brain actually goes, okay, now do they know at 2 years old, like that this is a remote? Well, probably not the first time they pick one up, right? Just like any baby, when you're going ball, ball, they don't know, but they pick it up so much faster than a typical neurotypical child does because of the way their brains work. So I believe them. They have no reason to lie about it, right? It's just that it's so much easier for them than it was for us. And yet they can't speak, which is so incredibly, I don't know, ironic that they're so good with literacy, but nobody knows it.
Yeah. So what age do you recommend the starting
Six
with
is a
the spelling
great
board?
6 is a great age. It's really sensory motor profile. Like
I feel like we prepared ourselves for it based off this conversation.
Totally. If someone's 4 years old and they're questioning, I'm like, come in for an assessment. But I just say, like, you'll at least be at peace and know what to do between 4 and 5. And some parents are ready to chase their kid around the room and, you know, like at 4 and do a lot of motor work and whatnot. It just takes longer to get to the open communication with a 4-year-old. But 5, 6, 7, 6 and 7 is probably my favorite age to get them going. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this. I'm going to grab those links too.
Awesome. Yeah, you know what I also didn't put in here? I mean, you'll get it off the website, but, and like I said, there are spellers method providers. So S2C, the movie talks all about S2C, which is where my mentor had trained me through. And then because we innovated and changed it with a lot of the developmental optometry accommodations and whatnot, they asked us to call what we're doing something else. It's very similar to S2C. So if you find a provider near you that teaches S2C, that's great. Like I would say, go there, see them. Even if you find a provider who's doing RPM, RPM is a little bit different, but they use the same materials. They're more of a academic teaching tool. They use the letterboards to help kids access curriculum. And S2C and Speller's method, primary focus is getting communication going. You get both with both methods. It's just sort of where is the front load emphasis on? And we front load getting you to be able to communicate with your child, and they front load helping your child, you know, access grade level content, kind of a thing. But you can email sandiego@spellers.com, or if it's the adult stuff you're interested in, and I'll put this down here too.
Thank you so much, Dawn Marie. I hope everybody gets a chance to get some of those links. And if anything, just remember Speller, they could find you at Ohana, California.
Yep.
They could find, if you Google Spellers, Oceanside, San Diego, Spellers Method, Spelling to Communicate, you're going to be able to find this community. And I just want to say from all of us, Dawn Marie, thank you so much to join our Million Mom movement, our Purium community. This is what we care about. We're all really deeply devoted to our children and to the betterment and respect of all beings on this planet. So thank you so much for being a part of this. I feel really grateful to have you here. Really grateful for coming into our lives, to my son's life. So thank you everyone for being here today. It's really wonderful to spend this time together.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you so much, Dawn Marie, for being here. And thank you all for being here as well. We will upload this replay to our YouTube channel. So if you see Naiva sharing her screen right now, you can take a screenshot of this so you can be sure to plug into all of our previous calls as well as our future calls. We have a ton of replays that you can share. We'll also make sure that we include all of Dawn Marie's information so you can find that and the people that you share it with as well. And yes, please like, follow, and share on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We also have this call every Thursday. So next Thursday, we're actually going to be talking about spring renewal and how you and your entire family can cleanse together. So please join us, invite someone that you love and care about that wants to transform their entire family's health. So thank you all so much for being here. If you are a Spanish speaking person and you'd like to stay on, we have our Spanish opportunity call that's starting right now, actually. So please stay on and join our community. If not, we will see you again